for developing this project. The framework development is a major part of the project. There are a number of small letters. I know you don't need to understand it. The outcome of this work package will be 3 volumes, and the 3 volumes on reading, mathematics and science will be published in a parallel way. Each volume will have 3 opening chapters, and these chapters, the volumes are structured, are edited in several ways, and the structure for the volumes are the same. And the 3 chapters seek the answer for the questions why children go to school. So what is the purpose of education? When we are dealing with diagnostic assessment, we have to develop a more sophisticated framework. We have to carefully design the system, and we have to well define what we really are measuring. So we are dealing with 3 global aims of schooling, and one is cultivating the mind, developing students' reasoning, thinking abilities. There are a number of expressions related to the school, to the goals of education, which do not have an external reference. We are speaking about intelligence, creativity, reasoning, thinking skills. All of these are some things that are related to our psychological processing. So all of these should be handled by analyzing the internal psychological processes without this phase about any reference to the external needs. The other goal is also an ancient goal of education. That's the issue of non-school as vitae, to teach students something which is relevant in their everyday life. So schools should provide students with practical knowledge that can be used outside of school. One of the major problems with Hungarian education is that our students are quite well in reproducing what they are taught at school. Our students are better in TIMSS assessments, which is measuring kind of a disciplinary knowledge, but they are not very good in application of the knowledge. So in a diagnostic system, we try to separate these 2 kinds of knowledge and distinguish applicable knowledge, practical knowledge, knowledge that can be used outside of school, from the disciplinary knowledge. And the 3rd type of knowledge is the knowledge mastered at school, at the school subjects in chemistry, physics, mathematics, and so on. These goals can be set in different ways, and different psychological theories, different models of knowledge can be applied to these 3 areas. For example, for the reasoning skills, measuring reasoning skills can be, the Piagetian theory can be used for that. As for the applicable knowledge, the type of theories that are used in PISA assessment can be used, and for learning the disciplinary content, the concept of expertise, expert knowledge, learning progression, and so on can be used. So each book begins with 3 opening chapters dealing with these issues from a scientific point of view. This is the research input, the scientific input of framework development. Each discipline, each domain has a coordinator who are also co-author of one of the chapters. Each chapter are co-authored by 2 researchers. The volumes will be co-edited by the experts of the given domain, someone who is a researcher in reading. Then the mathematics volume will be co-edited, a research mathematician, and the science volume will be co-edited by a research scientist. So we try to combine the different points of view and different expectations of schooling. It will not be a kind of a competition, what we quite often observe in the curriculum development. What is more important? Providing students with a good disciplinary knowledge, or helping students to learn their creativity and thinking and reasoning skills and so on. We distinguish 3 different dimensions, and each dimension will be properly treated in this model. And we have 5 international experts in this. For example, the science reasoning will be, or was co-authored by Philip Eddy. So this chapter is dealing with science, reasoning skills in science environment, scientific reasoning, we deal in this chapter with the issues of what science education can do to develop students' reasoning skills, thinking abilities, and how reasoning skills can be assessed in scientific environment, in science education environment. So this is the general philosophy of framework development, which is of course more sophisticated than this summary. That's one of the major parts of the first phase. Then we explore further areas for diagnostic assessment, and the idea here is that if we don't measure something at school, but measure very intensively something else, there is the danger that schools begin to focus only for some areas. We don't want to do that, so we focus on reading, mathematics and science. We develop a very sophisticated framework and assessment system for these one, but we also provide the schools with assessment systems with other areas which may be equally important, but will not be so frequently assessed, like visual skills, social skills, English as foreign language, civic education, motivation, learning to learn, health, literacy, and so on. Learning to learn, for example, is developed with some Finnish colleagues. Sirku is here. Thank you for her and her group who helped us to develop a framework for learning to learn and also for developing trust for learning to learn. The third major package is item development. The first phase we developed 600 items per domain, altogether more than 1,800 items in 3 dimensions per domain, so altogether 9 assessment dimensions will be defined. In this way, the assessment took place first on paper, then we migrated items to Tao, we created some new items for Tao, and we began online pilot assessments as well. As for the second phase, we have some other goals for the second phase. So we would like to extend the results of the first phase, creating more items, and integrate the entire system into the real-life educational processes. Upscaling is one of the main goals of the second phase. At the moment, we can cover about 5% of the schools. We have a system of schools, cooperating schools. 250 schools are part of the project. These schools were selected on a representative basis. Not every school can participate in the online assessment, but every student participates in the paper-based assessment. In the second phase, we would like to upscale the project, and we would like to reach 20% of the school population, so that we, in the second phase, we choose school districts, municipalities, and only those will be participating in the second phase who are able to fully participate in the online assessment. It will not be a representative sample, but it helps us to upscale the project. We integrate these into the real pedagogical educational processes, which may be done in part by training of teachers. So training will be a focus of the second phase. We train a lot of teachers how to use the system, what is the purpose of the feedback information. We train them in the psychological principles of learning as well. So that will be a complex training, in-service training of teachers, which will probably change the entire educational culture. The core of diagnostics will be Tao. The DIA is the abbreviation of the Diagnostic Assessment System, which includes Tao, but it's a little bit more than just Tao. So there is an interaction with student and the system, and there is an immediate interaction. Students receive the item, and they solve the problems, and the solution goes back to the system. And based on this information, the system generates a feedback for the students, what students receive immediately. Also, the system generates a feedback for teachers, and training is always indicated here. We know that without training teachers, without providing new knowledge, teachers will not be able to use the system. So based on the training and on the feedback, teachers can do a better job. That's the hypothesis or assumption. Of course, the system is more general than that. So we distinguish 2 parts. One is the diagnostics online, which based on Tao software, and item bank also related to Tao, and students interact with this when the assessment takes place. We have another database which contains the item metadata. Based on this item metadata, items are continuously renewed and rewritten. So these are the empirical input to the item development. The frameworks will be also time to time renewed. New scientific input will be given to item writers, and also item writers will be trained again and again. So that's one way of making this online assessment system a kind of a self-improving system. We can continuously improve the system. That's a big difference related to the system monitoring assessments, when they have to have a stable scale. They must not change the measure. They have to measure students always with the same measurement instruments. That's the big challenge of PISA assessments. They have to provide countries stable data, but it's not the case in a diagnostic system. We do not have to keep stable and continuous scales. We can improve the system continuously, learning from the system. So there is a statistical analysis module. We are going to develop this later. We have just general ideas about it. And the feedback module, which should be kind of a user-friendly module, not just providing teachers with some means and standard deviations or very technical information. Rather, we have to provide teachers with information what they can use immediately, so the information should be well processed and presented to teachers in a user-friendly form. The ultimate requirements of the system will be that we would like to serve the entire school population in the first 6 grades, which roughly 6,000 students. And also we have to communicate with about 60,000 teachers. The service should be available for about 2,000 schools, and we have to manage about 10,000 items in the system. So that's the requirements of the system. And of course, we have to develop Tao. We have to cooperate with our partners in the development of the system, because initially the system was not designed for serving that large population. But I think that the technology and the knowledge is a good basis for going further on this way. So the diagnostic assessment should be also integrated into the pedagogical processes. We have to show teachers how they can spare time, so it's not an extra burden on them. Rather, they can spare some energy for other purposes. The system identifies learning difficulties, provides sophisticated feedback, helps to personalize education so teachers can deal with the individual students. Such a system may contribute to maintaining students' interest and motivation and support self-regulated learning. On the other hand, future is even more promising. Students can be integrated into the system from the very beginning of schooling, and even kindergarten student can be connected to the system. We know that we sooner begin to help students to catch up and to cope with problems, the harder the effect, or the larger the effect can be on the educational outcomes. Thank you for your